After 4 years of work, the auditorium cheered, but the seats for my family were empty. Standing on stage, my phone buzzed with a photo of my mother hosting a party for my brother, who had not even graduated. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply disappeared. That was the moment I started to erase everything she had ever used to own me. My name is Jasmine Kelly. I was 30 years old, and I was holding my breath. The air inside the university arena was thick with the scent of cheap hairspray, floor wax, and the nervous sweat of 3,000 graduates. I sat in the fourth row of the humanities section, my knees pressed against the hard plastic back of the folding chair in front of me. I smoothed the heavy black fabric of my gown for the 10th time in 5 minutes. My fingers traced the velvet stripes on the sleeves, the tactile proof of a master's degree that had taken me 4 years of night shifts, skipped meals, and 70-hour work weeks to achieve. I was the first Kelly to go to college, let alone graduate school, the first to understand that a salary should not fluctuate based on how many tables were seated on a Friday night. I had built this moment brick by brick, dollar by dollar, entirely on my own, and yet, the only thing that occupied my mind was the terrifying, fragile hope that my mother would actually walk through the double doors at the top of the stadium stairs. I checked my phone. It was 1:45 in the afternoon. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. I had reserved 4 seats. They were prime seats, close to the aisle. Secured months ago when the registration portal opened at 6 in the morning. I had sent the tickets to my mother's email 3 times. I had printed physical copies and mailed them to her house in Ohio just to be safe. 2 weeks ago, she had told me on the phone that she had bought a new dress, a floral thing she found on sale at Macy's for $40. That detail, that specific, mundane detail about the dress, was the anchor I had been holding on to all morning. My phone vibrated in my lap. The screen lit up with a message from her. Something came up. Family emergency. Don't worry about us. Focus on your big day. My stomach dropped so hard I felt nauseous. The noise of the arena, the chatter of families, the tuning of the orchestra, the high-pitched laughter of the girl next to me seemed to mute into a dull, underwater roar. I stared at the words, family emergency. The phrase was a weapon my mother had honed to perfection over the last 2 decades. A family emergency could mean anything. It could mean a car accident, or it could mean she could not find her favorite earrings. It was the ultimate trump card, designed to shut down questions and demand immediate, guilt-ridden compliance. But usually, I was the one summoned to fix it. This time, I was simply being discarded. I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. Is everyone okay? Are you coming? 3 dots bubbled up, then vanished, then silence. The processional music began. The heavy brass notes of pomp and circumstance filled the cavernous space. Around me, people stood up, craning their necks to wave at parents, spouses, and children in the stands. I stood up too, out of reflex, but I did not look up. I knew what I would see. I looked towards Section C, Row G. I knew exactly where it was because I had studied the seating chart like it was a final exam. I saw the 4 empty chairs. They were gaping holes in a sea of packed bodies. A family to the left had spilled over their designated space, placing their coats and programs on 2 of my reserved seats, assuming no one was coming. They were right. The ceremony dragged on for 2 hours. It felt like a lifetime. I sat with my hands clasped tightly in my lap, listening to speeches about potential and the future and the power of resilience. The words felt like sand in my mouth. I kept checking my phone, hiding it under my sleeve. No response. No explanation. I thought about the last 4 years. I thought about the time I had to ask my mother for $50 to cover a textbook because my paycheck was late, and she had sighed, telling me that my brother needed new tires for his car, so she was tight on cash. I thought about the nights I studied by flashlight because I was trying to save on electricity, eating instant noodles that cost 30 cents a pack. I had done all of this with the singular goal of making something of myself, of proving that a Kelly could be more than just a paycheck-to-paycheck statistic. Jasmine Kelly. The dean's voice boomed over the speakers. I snapped back to reality. I was already standing at the edge of the stage. I walked forward. The lights were blindingly bright, hot against my skin. I could not see the audience, just a wall of darkness beyond the stage lights. I reached out and took the diploma cover. The dean, a man I had met only once, smiled professionally and shook my hand. "Congratulations," he said. I waited for it. I waited for the whistle, the shout, the familiar voice of a mother screaming her daughter's name. That was what happened for the girl before me. That was what happened for the boy after me. For me, there was just polite, rippling applause from strangers. It was the sound of indifference. It was the sound of people waiting for their own turn, clapping simply because it was the social contract. I walked across the stage, the heels I had bought for $60 clicking rhythmically on the wood. I descended the stairs and returned to my seat. I sat down, the diploma cover resting heavy and cool on my knees. It was over. I was a master of arts. My phone buzzed again, a long, sustained vibration. It was not a text. It was a notification from social media, a story update. My cousin, who lived 3 streets away from my mother, had just posted. My heart hammered against my ribs. If there was a family emergency, surely my cousin would know. Maybe someone was in the hospital. Maybe I had been too cynical. Panic flared in my chest, hot and sharp. I unlocked the phone and tapped the notification. The video loaded. It was not a hospital room. It was a backyard. Sunlight was streaming down on a familiar patio. There was music playing in the background, some upbeat country song my mother loved. The camera panned across a table laden with food, trays of barbecue, bowls of potato salad, a cooler full of beer. And there she was. My mother was standing in the center of the frame, holding a red plastic cup. She was wearing the floral dress, the one she told me she bought for my graduation. She was throwing her head back, laughing at something someone had said. She looked radiant. She looked completely unburdened. The camera panned further to the right. "Cheers to the big guy," my cousin's voice yelled from behind the camera. The lens focused on my brother. He was sitting in a lawn chair, wearing sunglasses and a t-shirt, holding a beer. He was grinning. My brother, who had dropped out of community college 3 semesters ago. My brother, who had lost his 3rd job in 6 months last week. My brother, who was currently living rent-free in my mother's basement. There was a banner hung unevenly on the back fence. It had been painted by hand. Family first. I stared at the screen until the video looped and started over, the laughter tinny and distorted through my phone speakers. Family first. They were having a party. On the day of my graduation, 500 miles away, they were having a party for no reason other than to be together, and they were celebrating him for doing absolutely nothing. The air in the arena suddenly felt too thin to breathe. I felt a physical pain in the center of my chest, like a rib had snapped inward. The betrayal was not sharp. It was heavy. It was a crushing weight that settled over my shoulders. She had lied. There was no emergency. She just did not want to come. She did not want to drive the 5 hours. She did not want to sit in a chair and watch me achieve something that eclipsed her golden boy. I stood up. I did not care that the ceremony was not over. I did not care that the dean was still reading names from the School of Education. I grabbed my purse and pushed past the knees of the people in my row. I muttered apologies that I did not mean. I burst out of the double doors into the lobby and kept walking until I hit the humid afternoon air of the parking lot. The sun was blinding. I found a quiet spot behind a concrete pillar near where I had parked my 10-year-old sedan. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I hit the speed dial for my mother. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Hello?" Her voice was loud, breathless. I could hear the music thumping in the background. I could hear the distinct sound of a beer cap popping off a bottle. "Mom," I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. It was flat, dead. "Jasmine!" She sounded almost annoyed, like I was a telemarketer calling during dinner. "Honey, I can't really hear you. It is chaos here." "You said there was an emergency," I said. "Oh, it's just, Your brother needed some support today. He was feeling a little down about his path, and we just thought we need to rally around him. Family supports family. Jasmine, you know that." She said it so easily, as if my graduation, the culmination of 6 years of higher education, was a trivial hobby I was indulging in, while my brother's bad mood was a crisis requiring a catered event. "I graduated today." "Mom," I said, "I just walked across the stage." I know," she said, dismissively, "and we are so proud of you. But look, I really cannot talk right now. Your aunt is asking me where the ice is, and the dip is running low. We will FaceTime you later, okay? Maybe next week when things settle down." "Next week," I repeated. "Yeah, don't be dramatic. Jasmine, you are always so intense. Go get yourself a nice dinner or something. Love you." The line went dead. I lowered the phone from my ear. I looked at the black screen. Go get yourself a nice dinner. I looked at the passenger seat of my car. The diploma cover was sitting there on the cracked leather. It looked like a prop. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I just stood there in the baking heat of the parking lot, surrounded by empty cars. For my entire life, I had been chasing them. I had been the good daughter, the one who got straight A's, the one who never asked for money, the one who mediated the fights between Mom and Dad before Dad left, the one who bailed my brother out of trouble with the principal, then the police, then his landlords. I had thought that if I was just perfect enough, if I achieved enough, if I became undeniable enough, she would finally look at me with the same adoration she gave him for simply breathing. I realized then, with a clarity that was colder than ice, that it would never happen. I could become the President of the United States, and she would miss the inauguration because my brother had a headache. I was not a daughter to her. I was a resource. I was a retirement plan. I was a trophy to brag about to the neighbors when it suited her, and a nuisance to be ignored when I needed her. I opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat. The steering wheel was hot against my palms. I looked at the diploma again. Jasmine Kelly. That name belonged to a girl who craved her mother's approval. That name belonged to a girl who would answer the FaceTime call next week and pretend it was okay. That name belonged to a victim. I tossed the mortarboard cap into the back seat. I started the engine. The air conditioning blasted warm air for a few seconds before turning cool. I was not going to go get a nice dinner. I drove out of the university lot, merging onto the highway. I did not turn toward my apartment. I watched the campus shrink in my rearview mirror until it was just a blur of brick and green trees. The tears did not come. Instead, a plan began to form. It was rigid and sharp, constructed with the same academic discipline I had used to get the degree sitting next to me. If they wanted to celebrate without me, they could have it. If my brother was the center of the universe, let him be the only star in her sky. I was done orbiting. I was going to disappear, and I was going to take every single part of me that she felt entitled to with me. The drive back to my apartment was silent. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. The rage that had burned so hot in the parking lot had cooled into something solid and heavy, like a stone settling at the bottom of a deep lake. Most people, when faced with a betrayal of this magnitude, would have exploded. They would have taken to social media. They would have drafted a long, scathing post on Facebook or Instagram, detailing the empty seats and the party and the hypocrisy. They would have demanded public validation for their private pain. I did the opposite. I went dark. I walked into my apartment, a small one-bedroom I had sustained on ramen noodles and sheer willpower for 2 years. I placed my diploma on the kitchen counter next to a stack of unpaid utility bills. Then, I sat down at my small, scratched dining table and took out my phone. I did not open social media. I opened my text message history with my mother. I needed to see it. I needed to see the data. I approached it not as a daughter, but as a researcher analyzing a failed system. I scrolled back. I went back 6 months, then 12 months, then 2 years. It was a long digital record of my servitude. Can you transfer $20 to Tyler? He is short for gas. Did you remember to call the insurance company for your brother? Tyler needs a ride to his interview. Can you skip your morning class? We are short on the electric bill. Can you help out? I took a notepad and a pen. I made 2 columns. One column was for messages asking how I was, asking about my studies, or simply checking in on me as a human being. The other column was for requests, demands, or complaints about my brother. I spent an hour scrolling and making tally marks. When I finished, the paper told a brutal truth. 85% of the communication I had received from my mother in the last 3 years was directly related to my brother or a financial demand. 10% was general logistical noise. Less than 5% was about me. And even that 5% was usually a prelude to a favor. Hey, honey, hope you are good. By the way, I was not a daughter. I was a utility. I was the backup generator that kicked in when the main power grid, my brother, failed. I was the endurance. I was the one who could take the hit, so their precious boy did not have to. I put the pen down. The realization was liberating. If I was just a utility, then I could simply shut off the service. I picked up my phone again and dialed the only number that mattered. Maya answered on the second ring. Maya had been my roommate sophomore year. She was the one who had brought me soup when I had the flu and my mother was too busy taking my brother to a concert to care. She was the one who knew exactly how hard I had worked for the piece of paper sitting on my counter. Hey, Maya said. How was it? Did you get the quintessential cap toss photo? They didn't come, I said. My voice was steady. There was a pause on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Maya knew the history. She knew the stakes. What do you mean they didn't come? Maya asked, her voice dropping an octave. I mean empty seats, I said. They are having a barbecue for Tyler. He is the guest of honor. I heard Maya inhale sharply, preparing to launch into a tirade of insults that would have made a sailor blush. I cut her off. Maya, listen, I don't need you to be angry for me. I am done being angry. I need you to help me execute a plan. What plan? She asked, wary now. Jasmine, don't do anything rash. I am not going to do anything rash, I said. I am going to do something permanent. I am disappearing, not from life, just from them. I am resigning from this family. Okay, Maya said immediately. I am in. What do we do? Done, she said. Pack a bag. Come over. I hung up. Now came the logistics. Disappearing in the modern world is not about wearing a disguise. It is about administration. It is about bureaucracy. I opened my laptop. First, the bank. I had a joint savings account with my mother, a relic from when I was 16. It had about $3,000 in it, money I had saved. Money she occasionally dipped into for emergencies that usually involved my brother's car repairs. I transferred every single cent of my portion to my personal checking account. Then, I initiated a transfer of all my funds to a completely new bank, a national chain that had no branches in my hometown. I closed the credit card that was linked to my parents' address. Next, the digital footprint. I went into my email settings. I created a new email address, one that had no variation of my name, just initials and numbers. I went through every vital service, student loans, car insurance, health portal, and updated the contact info to the new email and Maya's address. I did not delete my old email. I set up a filter. Any email coming from my mother, my brother, or my aunts would automatically skip the inbox and go into a folder marked archive. I would not see them. I would not get the notification, but they would be there, silently accumulating, if I ever needed evidence. Then, the phone. I could have just blocked them. That is what most people do. But blocking sends a message. It says, I am hurt. I am reacting. When you call a blocked number, it rings once and goes to voicemail, or gives a busy signal. It tells the caller they have been actively shut out. I did not want to shut them out. I wanted to ghost them. I went to my carrier's website and requested a number change. It would take effect in 2 hours. My old number, the number I had since I was 14, the number my mother used to summon me whenever she needed a problem solved, would simply cease to exist. When she called it, she would get a recording saying the number was disconnected. It would not be a rejection. It would be a void. But before I killed the line, I had one last thing to send. I opened my photo gallery. I found the picture I had taken in the parking lot. I had set my phone on the hood of my car and set the timer. In the photo, I was still wearing my graduation gown, the black fabric absorbing the harsh sunlight. I was holding my diploma. Behind me, there were no smiling relatives, no flowers, no balloons, just the gray concrete of the parking pillar and empty asphalt. My face was not sad. It was blank. I looked directly into the lens with eyes that demanded nothing. I opened the message thread with my mother. I attached the photo, no caption, no, I hate you, no, how could you, just the image of me, alone, with the proof of my achievement. I hit send. I watched the status change to delivered. Then I powered down the phone, removed the SIM card, and snapped it in half. I spent the next 4 hours packing. I did not pack everything. I packed my clothes, my books, my laptop. I left the furniture. I left the cheap kitchenware. I left the bed frame. I contacted my landlord and told him I was breaking the lease early and he could keep the security deposit. It was a loss of $800, but it was the price of freedom. I was methodical. I moved through the apartment like a crime scene cleaner, scrubbing away my existence. I filled 4 trash bags with things I did not need or want to carry. Old letters, birthday cards from years ago signed with generic messages, clothes that reminded me of who I was when I was trying to please them. At the bottom of my jewelry box, I found it. A small, silver-framed photograph. It was old, the edges slightly yellowed. It was a picture of me at 5 years old, sitting on a porch swing next to an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile. Grandma. She was the only one who had ever really seen me. She was the one who had told me, years ago, Jasmine, you have a spine of steel. Do not let them turn it into wire. She had died 4 years ago, right before I started my master's program. My mother had told me that Grandma had died peacefully in her sleep, and that there was not much left in the estate. I had mourned her alone, just as I had done everything else alone. I looked at the photo. In a life I was systematically erasing, this was the only artifact I could not part with. I wrapped the frame carefully in a soft t-shirt and placed it in the center of my suitcase. By 6 p.m, my car was packed. My apartment was echoing and empty. I left the keys on the counter. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. I drove to Maya's house. When I arrived, she was waiting on the porch with a glass of wine and a look of fierce determination. "Done?" she asked as I walked up the steps. "Done," I said. "The number is dead. The bank accounts are moved. The lease is broken." "And your mom?" Maya handed me the wine glass. "I sent her a picture," I said, taking a sip. The wine tasted sharp and clean. "And now, I wait." "She is going to freak out," Maya said. "Not because she misses you, but because she can't control you." "I know," I said. "That is the point." I did not sleep well that night, but it was not because of grief. It was because of the adrenaline. My mind was racing, cataloging the next steps. New job, new city, new life. I kept my new phone on silent. I had given the new number to Maya and absolutely no one else. 3 days later, I was on the interstate, driving toward a city where no one knew my name. I was Jasmine Kelly, but not the Jasmine Kelly who fixed tires and loaned money and begged for affection. I was a ghost in the machine of my own family. I thought I had cut the cord. I thought I had successfully amputated the limb that was poisoning me. I thought the silence was the end of the story. I did not know then that silence is not just an ending. Sometimes, it is the loud intake of breath before a scream. I did not check the archive folder in my email. If I had, I might have seen the frantic messages starting to pile up. Not messages of worry, messages of accusation. Messages that revealed that my disappearance had triggered something far more dangerous than just a mother's bruised ego. But for now, I drove. The road stretched out before me, long and gray and beautifully empty. I had the photo of my grandmother in the passenger seat. I had my degree in the back, and for the first time in 30 years, I belonged entirely to myself. Chicago was nothing like the suffocating humidity of the Ohio Valley I had left behind. It was sharp, windy, and gray. A city of steel and glass that felt indifferent to my existence. I loved it. For the first time in my life, I was small, anonymous, and entirely free. Maya and I had found a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood called Ravenswood. It was not a penthouse, but to me, it felt like a fortress. The floors were hardwood, the heating rattled in the pipes, and the windows looked out over a train line. Maya had decided to move with me 3 weeks after I left. She said my departure had broken the spell for her too, that seeing me cut the cord so ruthlessly made her realize she was staying in our hometown out of habit, not happiness. Living with Maya was a revelation. In the house I grew up in, every room had a charge, a potential for explosion. If I walked into the kitchen while my mother was sighing, I knew I had to apologize for existing. If I sat in the living room while my brother Tyler was watching television, I knew I had to be silent. But with Maya, the air was neutral. We split the rent 50-50. We took turns buying groceries. There was no scorekeeping. There was no emotional debt. I found a job at a firm called Archer & Klein. It was a logistics consultancy, the kind of place that thrived on efficiency and data. I was hired as a junior analyst. The office was quiet, carpeted in slate gray, and smelled of coffee and expensive printer paper. My boss was a woman named Elena. The first time she called me into her office, my heart hammered against my ribs with the familiar rhythm of panic. I sat in the chair opposite her desk, my hands gripping my knees, bracing myself for a reprimand. I scanned my memory for mistakes. Had I been 5 minutes late? Had I formatted the spreadsheet wrong? Elena looked up from a file. "Jasmine," she said, "I was looking at your projection for the shipping routes. You suggested a detour through the southern hub." "I can change it," I said quickly. The words were out of my mouth before I could think. "I can revert it to the standard route. It is no problem." Elena frowned, taking off her reading glasses. "Why would you do that? Your projection saves the client 12% in fuel costs. It was a brilliant catch. I just wanted to ask if you think we can apply this model to the western sector too." I stared at her. The silence in the room stretched out, but it was not hostile. She was waiting for my answer. She was not waiting for me to apologize. She was waiting for my expertise. "Yes," I said, my voice steadying. "Yes, I think we can—" "Good," Elena said. "Run the numbers. And Jasmine, good work." I walked back to my desk feeling lightheaded. No one had ever called my work brilliant. My mother had only ever praised me when I was useful to her, and even then, the praise was always qualified. "Thanks for the money." "But why did it take so long?" "Thanks for fixing the car." "But Tyler is still stressed." Here, my value was objective. It was measured in results, not in how much pain I could absorb. The weeks turned into months. The leaves on the trees along the avenue turned gold, then brown, and then vanished under the first heavy snow of December. I began to reclaim the parts of my brain that had been occupied by my family. It was a slow process. Like clearing out a hoarder's house, I realized that for 30 years, I had not made a single decision that was truly my own. Every choice, from the clothes I wore to the major I studied, had been filtered through the lens of what will mom think, or how will this affect the family budget. One Saturday, I went to a furniture store to buy a reading chair for my bedroom. I stood in front of a navy blue velvet armchair. It was $300. I had the money. My bank account, unburdened by Tyler's emergencies, was growing steadily. I reached for my phone to take a picture. My thumb hovered over the camera app. The instinct was visceral. Send it to Mom. Ask her if the color was too dark. Ask her if it was a waste of money. Wait for her to tell me that $300 could pay for Tyler's groceries for a month. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking. I stood there in the middle of the showroom, surrounded by strangers, fighting a ghost. "No," I whispered. I did not take the picture. I found a salesperson and paid for the chair. When it was delivered 3 days later, I sat in it and drank a cup of tea. It was the most comfortable chair I had ever sat in, because it was the only thing I owned that did not carry the weight of her opinion. But the past did not vanish just because I bought furniture. The nights were still hard. Sometimes, I would wake up at 3 a.m, gasping for air. The image of the empty seats at graduation burned behind my eyelids, in the dark. The silence of the apartment felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I would reach for my phone, checking to see if I had missed a call. Even though I knew the number was new, I had a recurring nightmare where I was screaming in a glass box, and my mother and Tyler were on the other side, laughing and eating barbecue, completely unable to hear me. I started going to therapy. My therapist, a calm man named Dr. Evans, told me that I was experiencing withdrawal. "You are grieving," he said during one session, "not for the mother you had, but for the mother you wanted, and you are detoxing from the chaos. You have lived in survival mode for so long that safety feels boring, or even dangerous. You are waiting for the other shoe to drop." "She hates this," I told him. "I know she does. The fact that I am okay, the fact that I am thriving, that is the ultimate insult to her." "Why does that matter?" Dr. Evans asked. "Because her entire narrative is that I need her," I said. "She told everyone I was unstable, that I was difficult. If I'm successful and happy without her, it proves she was the problem, and she will never forgive me for that." I was right, of course, but I convinced myself that distance was a shield she could not break. I had my archive folder in my email, the one where her messages went to die. I never opened it. I watched the number next to the folder grow. 10 emails, 20 emails, 50 emails. Then, around the 4th month, it stopped. The count stayed at 62 for weeks. I thought I had won. I thought she had finally given up, found a new source of supply, or maybe focused all her energy on Tyler. I began to breathe easier. I started dating a little. Coffee with a guy from accounting. Dinner with a friend of Maya's. I felt like a person being stitched back together. I had the photo of Grandma on my nightstand. Sometimes, before I went to sleep, I would talk to her. "I did it, Grandma," I would say. "I got out." I believed it. I believed the war was over and I was just navigating the reconstruction. Then came the Tuesday in late January. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. I had just come home from work, shaking the snow off my coat. Maya was in the kitchen making pasta. The apartment smelled of garlic and warmth. "You have mail," Maya said, pointing to the small table by the door. "Looks official. Thick envelope." I frowned. I was not expecting anything. I picked up the envelope. It was heavy, made of high-quality, cream-colored paper. The return address was a law firm in Ohio I did not recognize, Halloway and Associates. My stomach turned over. A lawsuit? Had my mother found a way to sue me for parental support? In some states, that was possible. My fingers felt numb as I tore open the seal. I pulled out a stack of documents. The cover letter was crisp and formal. "Dear Ms. Kelly, we have been retained to locate you regarding the estate of the late Margaret Rose Kelly. As you are aware, the probate period was extended due to administrative complications. Following a recent audit of the assets and the discovery of a supplemental codicil, we are required to notify all named beneficiaries." I froze. Grandma, Margaret Rose Kelly. She had died 4 years ago. My mother had handled everything. She had told me there was no money, just the house which had to be sold to pay off Grandma's medical debts. She had told me there was nothing left but some old clothes and knickknacks. I had believed her because I was grieving, and because I had no reason to think my mother would lie about her own mother's death. I read the next paragraph. "Per the terms of the last will and testament, a trust was established in your name, specifically designated for your educational expenses and postgraduate establishment. The current valuation of the trust is—" I stopped reading. The words swam before my eyes. A trust. For my education. I thought about the night shifts at the diner. I thought about the student loans that were currently taking $400 a month out of my paycheck. I thought about the time I ate plain rice for a week because I had to buy a textbook. Grandma had left me money specifically for the struggle I had just endured alone. I skipped to the bottom of the page. However, We have encountered significant irregularities regarding the disbursement of these funds over the last 3 years. Our records indicate that you authorized the release of the majority of the principal to Mrs. Marjorie Kelly acting as your proxy. We require your signature to close the final audit. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. Jasmine? Maya asked, turning off the stove. What is it? You are white as a sheet. She stole it, I whispered. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. What? She stole it all, I said, louder this time. The shock was cracking, revealing a core of pure, molten fury beneath. My grandmother left me money. For school. For this, I gestured to my degree on the wall. And my mother took it. She told the lawyer she was my proxy. I looked at the document again. Irregularities. My mother hadn't just neglected me. She hadn't just missed my graduation. She had actively cannibalized my future to feed her present. And worst of all, she had used my name to do it. The email address included in the letter caught my eye. It wasn't just a physical letter. They had sent a digital copy to my old email address, which had auto-forwarded to the archive. But this physical copy had found me because of a change of address update I had filed with the Federal Postal Service, the one system I couldn't hide from. I looked at the date on the letter. It was dated 3 days before my graduation. The pieces clicked together with a sickening sound. The family emergency, the lack of money for a plane ticket, the sudden party for Tyler. It wasn't just narcissism. It was guilt. It was distraction. She knew the audit was coming. She knew the house of cards was shaking. I was not just a disappointed daughter anymore. I was a victim of fraud. Maya was at my side, reading the letter over my shoulder. Oh my God, she breathed. Jasmine, this is a felony. I looked up at Maya. The fear I had felt about the new life evaporated. The gentle, healing Jasmine who bought blue velvet chairs and drank tea was gone. In her place was the woman who had walked out of a graduation ceremony and erased her identity in 4 hours. But this time, I wasn't going to disappear. She thinks I am gone, I said, my voice cold and hard. She thinks I am ghosting her because my feelings are hurt. She thinks she got away with it because I am too weak to confront her. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. She is wrong. I walked over to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. The city was bright and alive. I had built a life here, a small, fragile life, but I couldn't keep it if the foundation was rotten. I couldn't be free if I allowed her to hold this final, massive lie over me. I have to go back, I said. Maya didn't argue. She didn't tell me to let it go. She just nodded. When? She asked. Soon, I said. But not as her daughter. I am going back as the one thing she never expected me to become. What is that? Maya asked. I turned from the window. A creditor. The envelope from Halloway & Associates was not just a notification. It was an autopsy report of my grandmother's intentions. I sat at the kitchen table, the unfinished pasta cold in the bowl next to me, and spread the documents out under the harsh light of the overhead fixture. Maya sat opposite me, her arms crossed, watching my face with intense, protective silence. I had called the law firm immediately after opening the first letter. It was 8 o'clock at night, so I had left a voicemail, but the sheer volume of paper in front of me told a story that did not need a narrator. There were bank statements, copies of a trust agreement, and photocopies of correspondence. But the first thing that caught my eye, the thing that made my breath hitch in my throat, was a photocopy of a handwritten note. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was spidery, slanted, and pressed hard into the paper. It was Grandma's hand. My dearest Jasmine, I know your mother says you do not care about the pageantry, but I know you. You are quiet, but you are proud. This money is not for bills. It is not for the house. It is for you to stand on that stage and wear that gown. I promised your grandfather I would see you graduate. If I am not there in person, I will be there in this way. Do not let them make you small. I read the note 3 times. She knew, I whispered. She left this specifically for the graduation. I picked up the trust summary. The trust had been established 5 years ago, shortly before Grandma died. The principal amount was significant. It was $25,000. To a wealthy family, that might have been nothing. To me, it was a fortune. It was enough to have paid off half my student loans. It was enough to have started my life without the crushing weight of debt I carried every single day, said. But looking at the current balance, the number was 0. Look at the dates, Maya said, pointing to the transaction history stapled to the back of the summary. Start from the beginning. I pulled my laptop over. I needed to see this clearly. I needed to overlay the cold financial data with the emotional chaos of my life. I opened the archive folder in my email, the one I had ignored for months. I searched for keywords in the subject lines for my mother. Emergency, help, Tyler, urgent. I felt like a forensic accountant dissecting a corporate collapse, except the corporation was my own family. Okay, I said, my voice steady but tight. First withdrawal, $3,200. Date is October 14th, 2 years ago. I typed the date into my email search bar. A result popped up instantly. Subject: please read. Tyler in trouble. Body: Jasmine. Please, we are desperate. Tyler got into a fender bender and the other guy is threatening to sue if we don't settle cash. I don't know what to do. I am sick with worry. I looked at Maya. I remember this. She called me crying. She said she was taking a payday loan to cover it. She made me feel guilty for not having any savings to give her. She didn't take a loan, Maya said, her voice hard. She took your money. I moved down the list. Withdrawal, $1,500, February 2nd, last year. Search result. Subject: heating bill overdue. Body: they are going to cut the gas. Jasmine: it is freezing here. How can you be so selfish when we are shivering? I sent her $200 that day, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. I skipped buying groceries for a week to send it, and she had already taken $1,500 from the trust. The list went on. It was a systematic siphoning. Every time a crisis arose, real or manufactured, my mother dipped into the fund that Grandma had legally set aside for me. She treated it like a personal piggy bank. But the worst entry was the final one. May 15th, I read, 1 month before graduation, withdrawal of the remaining balance, $11,000. I searched the date. There were no frantic emails for this one, no emergencies, no car crashes. Why? I asked the room. Why drain the rest of it then? I shuffled through the papers until I found a letter addressed to the trustee, a man named Mr. Henderson. The letter was signed by my mother. Dear Mr. Henderson, regarding the distribution of the remaining funds for Jasmine's education, I have spoken with my daughter extensively. She has decided that attending the graduation ceremony is not in her best interest due to her anxiety and work schedule. She has requested that the funds be released to me to assist with family housing stability, which will support her transition back home after her degree is completed. I stared at the words, transition back home. She never intended for me to leave. She never intended for me to succeed. She had painted a picture of me to the trustee, a picture of a frightened, anxious girl who was coming home to Mommy to justify stealing the money that would have set me free. She lied, I said. She told them I didn't want to graduate. She told them I authorized this. That is fraud, Maya said. She stood up and paced the small kitchen. Jasmine, that is literal fraud. She forged your consent. She misrepresented your intentions to a fiduciary. I picked up the bank statement again. $11,000. Where did that money go? I asked. If there was no emergency, where did it go? I thought back to the photo on the phone. The graduation day, the party, the banner, family first. The new grill in the background, the catering trays, the piles of beer, the new clothes my brother was wearing. And then I remembered something else. A post my cousin had made a week after graduation, bragging about Tyler's new ride, a used truck. She bought him a truck, I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She took the last of my grandmother's legacy, The money meant to celebrate my hard work, and she used it to buy my dropout brother a truck and throw him a party on my graduation day. The silence in the apartment was deafening. This was not just bad parenting. This was theft. This was a calculated, multi-year campaign to rob me of my agency and my resources. She had turned Grandma's love into Tyler's gas money. I looked at the handwritten note again. Do not let them make you small. I had spent my whole life making myself small, so there would be enough room for their egos. I had disappeared to Chicago to make myself invisible so they couldn't hurt me. But invisibility was just another form of being small. I have to go back, I said again. Maya stopped pacing. To confront her? No, I said. Confrontation is emotional. She thrives on emotion. If I go back and scream at her, she will cry. She will say she did it for the family. She will say I am ungrateful. She will twist it until I am the villain. I stood up and walked to the window. The reflection in the glass showed a woman I barely recognized. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were hard. I am going back to investigate, I said. I need proof that I didn't authorize those releases. I need to find out who this Mr. Henderson is and why he released the funds without speaking to me directly. I need to build a case so watertight that when I finally drop the hammer, she won't be able to cry her way out of it. You are going to need a lawyer, Maya said. A real one, not the estate lawyer. I know, I said, and I am going to need to get inside the house. There are documents there. Grandma kept journals. If Mom hasn't burned them, they will prove what Grandma actually wanted. They will expect you to be angry, Maya warned. They will expect the dramatic return. Then I won't give it to them, I replied. I will go back for the memorial service. The letter said there is a final reading and a memorial next week for the anniversary of Grandma's passing. It is the perfect cover. I will play the part of the prodigal daughter who cooled off and came home. I turned back to the table and began gathering the papers. I organized them into a neat stack. I was not shaking anymore. The cold, analytical part of my brain, the part that saved clients 12% on fuel costs, had taken over. I am going to get my money back, I said. Every single cent, and then I am going to expose them, not on Facebook, not in a text message. I looked at Maya. I am going to expose them in court. Maya smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. I will book the flight. You pack the evidence. I looked down at Grandma's note one last time. I will be there in this way. You were right, Grandma, I whispered to the paper. You gave me exactly what I needed. You gave me the weapon. I walked into my bedroom and pulled my suitcase out of the closet, the same suitcase I had used to flee. I opened it and looked at the empty space. Last time, I had packed it with fear and desperation. This time, I was packing it with strategy. I took out my phone, the new one, and dialed the number for Holloway & Associates. It was late, but I knew I could leave a message for the senior partner. This is Jasmine Kelly, I said when the beep sounded. My voice was clear and professional. I received your correspondence regarding the estate of Margaret Rose Kelly. I will be attending the memorial next week. Please do not inform my mother. I would like to schedule a private meeting with you to discuss the discrepancies in the account. I have records that contradict the trustee's actions. I look forward to clearing this up. I hung up. The game had changed. I was no longer the daughter who ran away. I was the auditor coming for the audit. And for the first time in history, the Kelly family books were not going to balance. The house in Ohio looked exactly the same, which was the most unsettling part. It was a 2-story colonial with peeling white paint and a porch that sagged slightly to the left. But parked in the driveway, gleaming under the overcast sky, was a massive, charcoal gray pickup truck. It was brand new. The tires were still black and shiny. It was the truck my grandmother's legacy had bought. I parked my rental car, a modest sedan, down the street. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I was wearing a tailored black suit I had bought in Chicago, sharp heels, and my hair was cut into a sleek, angular bob. I did not look like the Jasmine who used to wear oversized hoodies to hide from her mother's criticism. I looked like a stranger. I looked like someone who billed by the hour. I walked up the driveway, The front door was open, and the sound of hushed, mournful chatter drifted out. It was the 1-year anniversary of Grandma's death, delayed because of scheduling conflicts, which I now knew meant my mother waiting until the heat died down for my disappearance. I stepped onto the porch and slipped inside. The living room was crowded. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were balancing paper plates of potato salad and ham on their knees. The air smelled of stale coffee and potpourri. No one noticed me at first. I stood in the archway between the hall and the living room, a ghost attending her own funeral. "It has been so hard on Marjorie," I heard my Aunt Carol saying. She was sitting on the sofa, leaning in toward a neighbor. First her mother passes, and then Jasmine just snaps. You know she has always been unstable. "Unstable?" the neighbor asked, shaking her head. "Oh, yes," Carol whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Mental health issues. Marjorie tried everything. She paid for therapy. She supported her through school. And then the girl just vanishes. Not even a thank you. Marjorie thinks she might be on drugs." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Drugs. That was a new one. It was easier to explain a drug addict daughter than a successful one who had walked away from abuse. "She just couldn't handle the pressure of the real world," another cousin chimed in. "Some people just crack." I stepped forward. My heels clicked sharply on the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the murmur of the room like a gunshot. "Hello, Aunt Carol?" I said. My voice was low, smooth, and completely devoid of warmth. The room went silent. Every head turned. Aunt Carol dropped her plastic fork. "Jasmine?" she gasped. I walked into the center of the room. I did not shrink. I did not hunch my shoulders. I stood at my full height, holding my designer clutch like a weapon. "I am surprised to hear about my drug problem," I said, looking directly at Carol, "especially since I have been working as a logistics analyst for a firm in Chicago for the past 6 months. But please, do not let facts get in the way of a good story." Before Carol could stutter a response, there was a commotion from the kitchen. My mother appeared. She was wearing black, of course, a dramatic, lace-trimmed dress that made her look like a grieving widow from a soap opera. She was holding a tray of deviled eggs. When she saw me, the tray wobbled dangerously. "Jasmine?" she breathed. For a second, I saw the real emotion in her eyes. It was fear. She looked at my suit. She looked at my hair. She looked at the way I was standing. She realized instantly that the daughter she could bully into submission had not walked through that door. Then, the mask slammed back into place. Her face crumpled into a perfect expression of tragic relief. "Oh, my baby!" she cried out. She abandoned the eggs on a side table and rushed toward me, arms wide open. "You came back! You finally came home!" She threw her arms around me. I did not hug her back. I stood stiff as a board, my arms at my sides. She smelled of cheap perfume and the wine she had been drinking since noon. "I was so worried," she sobbed into my shoulder, playing to the audience. "I thought you were dead. Why did you do this to me? How could you just leave your mother like that?" I waited until she pulled back, wiping tearless eyes. She expected me to apologize. She expected me to break down and beg for forgiveness in front of the family, validating her narrative of the saintly mother and the erratic daughter. "I am here for Grandma," I said. My voice was loud enough to be heard by everyone, but calm. "I received the notice from the lawyer about the final reading." My mother froze. The mention of the lawyer made her left eye twitch. "We can talk about business later," she said quickly, her voice dropping to a hiss. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "Don't cause a scene, Jasmine. Everyone is looking." "I am not causing a scene," I said, removing her hand from my arm with deliberate slowness. "I am just paying my respects." I walked past her. I saw my brother, Tyler, sitting in the corner. He looked heavier. He was wearing a brand new smart watch and designer sneakers. When our eyes met, he looked away, guilt flashing across his face before he buried it in a beer bottle. I made my way through the house. I needed to get to the study, Grandma's old room. "Jasmine, wait!" My mother followed me into the hallway. away from the guests. Her voice changed instantly. The sobbing victim vanished, replaced by the snarling matriarch. "Who do you think you are? Walking in here like you own the place after ghosting us for half a year? Do you have any idea how embarrassed I was?" Embarrassed? I turned to face her. "Is that why you told everyone I was on drugs? To cover your embarrassment?" "I had to tell them something," she snapped. "People were asking questions. Where is Jasmine? Why wasn't she at the graduation party? I had to protect the family reputation. I couldn't tell them you just ran away like a spoiled brat because you didn't get enough attention." "I didn't run away because of attention," I said. "I ran away because you stole from me." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you are talking about." "The trust," I said. "Grandma's money. The $25,000 meant for my start in life. The money you withdrew by claiming I was too unstable to manage it." "That money was for the family," she hissed, stepping closer. "We were drowning. Jasmine, Tyler needed help. The house needed repairs. Grandma would have wanted us to survive. She didn't know how bad things were." "Did she?" I asked. "Or did you tell her lies about me to make sure she didn't leave the money directly to me?" "I protected you," she yelled, though she kept her voice low enough not to carry to the living room. "I told her you were struggling, that you were overwhelmed. If she knew you were fine, she wouldn't have understood why you weren't helping us. I took the burden off you." "You told her I didn't want a graduation," I said. "You wrote a letter to the trustee saying I was moving back home. You erased my achievements before I even accomplished them." "You are selfish," she spat. "Just like your father. You think that degree makes you better than us? You think you can just hoard money while your brother suffers?" "Tyler is 28 years old," I said. "He isn't suffering. He is driving a $50,000 truck. He needs that for work." "He doesn't have a job," I countered. My mother glared at me. "You can't prove anything. I am the executor. I had power of attorney. Whatever I did legally." "We will see about that," I said. I turned and walked toward the study door. "You can't go in there," she said, panic rising in her voice. "We are using it for storage." I ignored her and opened the door. The room was a disaster. Grandma's library, which had once been neat and organized, was piled high with boxes of old clothes, broken Christmas decorations, and junk. It was a physical representation of how little they respected her memory. I walked over to the heavy oak filing cabinet in the corner. This was where Grandma kept everything. Every receipt, every letter, every report card. "Jasmine, get out!" My mother was at the door, but she didn't dare come in. She was afraid of what I would find. I pulled open the top drawer. It was empty. I opened the second drawer, also empty. "Where are the files?" I asked, turning to her. "The estate records, Grandma's journals, the financial ledgers." "We threw them out," she said defiantly. "Who needs old paper? We decluttered." "You threw out legal documents for an open estate?" "It is my house now," she said. "I can throw out whatever I want." I looked at the empty metal drawers. She had sanitized the crime scene. She had known, deep down, that one day I might come looking. But my mother was not smart. She was cunning, but she was not thorough. I looked at the bookshelf. On the top shelf, shoved behind a row of dusty encyclopedias, was a small, leather-bound book. It wasn't a file. It was a day planner. Grandma used to write everything in them. My mother followed my gaze. Her eyes widened. I reached up and pulled the book down. It was dated from 3 years ago. "Give me that!" She lunged for it. I stepped back, holding it out of reach. "Touch me, and I walk out into that living room and tell Aunt Carol exactly how much that truck cost." My mother froze. She knew I would do it. She saw the calculation in my eyes. I opened the planner. I flipped through the pages. It was Grandma's handwriting. "February 12th. Marjorie came by today, asking for money again. Said Jasmine failed her classes and needs tuition help. I am worried about the girl. Why does she not call? Marjorie says Jasmine refuses to speak to me because she is ashamed." I flipped forward. May 4th. Marjorie says Jasmine is in trouble with the law. Needs legal fees. I authorize the withdrawal. I feel sick. My poor granddaughter. I looked up at my mother. The book was trembling in my hands. You didn't just steal the money, I whispered. The horror was colder than the anger. You poisoned her memory of me. You made her die thinking I was a failure. You made her die thinking I was a criminal. My mother crossed her arms. She didn't look sorry. She looked annoyed that she had been caught. She was old, my mother said, shrugging. She was going to die anyway. What difference did it make what she thought? It was easier to get the check signed if she thought it was an emergency. You weren't using the money. You were doing fine. Why should it sit there? You stole the last years of our relationship, I said. I wondered why she stopped writing back. I wondered why she sounded so sad on the phone. You were intercepting my letters, weren't you? I managed the communication, she said, using a corporate buzzword to describe her cruelty. It was for the best. I closed the book. I felt a profound sense of clarity. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about a truck. This was about a woman who had systematically dismantled my identity to fund her lifestyle. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a character in a tragedy she wrote to extract sympathy and cash from her own mother. I am keeping this, I said, holding up the planner. You can't take that, she said. That is property of the estate. I am the beneficiary, I said. And this proves that the executor acted in bad faith. It proves undue influence. It proves fraud. You won't sue your own mother, she sneered. You don't have the guts. You are weak. That is why you ran away. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me and realized I felt absolutely nothing for her. No love, no hate, just the clinical detachment of a prosecutor looking at a defendant. I didn't run away, I said quietly. I went to get reinforcements. I walked past her, clutching the planner against my chest. Where are you going? She demanded. The reading hasn't started. I have seen enough, I said. I will see you in court, Mother. I walked out of the study, through the living room where my relatives were still eating their potato salad, and out the front door. I marched down the driveway, past the charcoal gray truck. I took my phone out and took a picture of the license plate. Then I took a picture of the truck parked in front of the house. I got into my rental car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the sheer magnitude of what I had to do next. I dialed the number for the lawyer, Holloway. Mr. Holloway, I said when his assistant answered. This is Jasmine Kelly. I need to come in today, and tell him to prepare the paperwork for a forensic audit. I have the smoking gun. I looked back at the house one last time. My mother was standing in the window, watching me. She looked small. She looked trapped. She had spent years erasing me. Now, I was going to use the ink of the law to write myself back into existence and write her out of everything she thought she owned. I did not go back to the estate lawyer, Mr. Holloway. I knew enough about corporate structures to know that the estate lawyer worked for the executor, which meant he worked for my mother. He might have been negligent, or he might have been complicit, but either way, he was not on my side. Instead, I drove 40 minutes to a glass-walled office complex in downtown Columbus. I had an appointment with Marcus Vance, a litigator Maya had found for me. He specialized in forensic accounting and family fraud. Marcus was a man of few words. He sat behind a desk that was completely clear except for a legal pad and the stack of documents I had brought with me. Let me get this straight, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. You are alleging that the executor falsified the beneficiary's consent to drain a trust, and then utilized those funds for personal expenses unrelated to the estate? I am not alleging it, I said, placing Grandma's leather-bound planner on the desk. I am proving it. I spent the next 3 hours in that office. We did not cry. We did not talk about my feelings. We talked about data. I had brought my laptop. I connected it to the large monitor on the wall. I opened the spreadsheet I had started in Chicago, the one where I had begun to track the timeline. But now, with the planner and the bank statements I had photographed in the study before my mother could stop me, I had the complete picture. Look here, I said, pointing to a line item from 2 years ago. The bank statement showed a withdrawal of $4,000. The memo line read, "Emergency home repair. Roof leak." I pulled up a weather report from that week. "It didn't rain for 12 days that month," I said. Then I pulled up my brother's Instagram archive. I had used a third-party site to scrape his history before he could block me. "On that exact same day," I said, pointing to a photo on the screen, "Tyler posted this." The photo showed my brother holding a new gaming setup, a high-end PC tower, 3 monitors, and a professional headset. The caption read, "Rate my new rig. Finally got the upgrade." "The cost of that setup is roughly $4,000, Marcus noted, scribbling on his pad. "Exactly," I said. "There was no roof leak. The roof was the cover story for the bank. The money went to Best Buy." We went through the list, line by line. It was tedious, exhausting work, but it was necessary. We built a dossier of theft. Withdrawal. Medical expenses for Jasmine. Reality. Down payment on a jet ski for Tyler. Withdrawal. Legal retainer for Jasmine's trouble. Reality. Paying off Tyler's gambling debt. But the most damning piece of evidence was the transfer method. I had noticed a recurring payee on the estate account. T.K. Maintenance Solutions. My mother had written checks totaling nearly $12,000 to this company over the course of 3 years. "I looked up the business registration," I told Marcus. "It doesn't exist. There is no T.K. Maintenance Solutions registered in Ohio. But look at the endorsement on the back of the canceled checks." I zoomed in on the image of the check I had photographed. The signature on the back was messy, scrawled in blue ink. Tyler Kelly. "She set up a fake vendor," Marcus said, his voice flat. "She was laundering the money directly to him and writing it off as estate maintenance to avoid tax penalties and suspicion." "She made me the problem," I said, staring at the screen. "And she made him the employee." Marcus closed his folder. "We have enough for a criminal referral," he said. "We could go to the police. This is embezzlement. It is fraud. Ideally, we file a civil suit for damages and a petition to remove her as executor immediately." "If I file a suit now," I said, "she will spin it. She will tell the family I am suing her because I am greedy. She will say the money was a loan. She will destroy the rest of the evidence in the house before a subpoena can be served." "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "I want them to admit it," I said. "I want them to say it out loud, in front of witnesses. Before they know I have the paper trail, I need to trap them in the lie." Marcus looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "That is risky. Jasmine, if you confront them without a court order, things can get volatile." "They won't get volatile," I said, smoothing my skirt, "because I won't be emotional. I am just going to ask questions. I am going to let them dig their own graves." "There is a final settlement meeting scheduled," Marcus said, looking at the Holloway correspondence. "Next Saturday, at the house. The lawyer, Mr. Holloway, will be there to have the family sign off on the final closing of the estate." "That is when I do it," I said. "All the aunts will be there, the cousins. She invited everyone because she wants an audience for her performance as the grieving, burdened matriarch. She wants them to see her sign the papers and finish the hard work." "She doesn't know you have the planner?" Marcus asked. "She knows I saw it," I said. "But she doesn't know I photographed every page, and she doesn't know I have the bank statements. She thinks I'm just angry. She thinks I am powerless because I am unstable." "Okay," Marcus said. "I will prepare the draft complaint. I will have the sheriff on standby to serve her the moment the meeting is over. But Jasmine, once you do this, there is no going back. You are not just suing your mother. You are dismantling your family." "My family dismantled itself years ago," I replied. "I am just clearing the debris." I spent the next 3 days in my hotel room. I did not visit old friends. I did not go to my favorite restaurants. I worked. I printed out 3 copies of every document. I organized them into binders. Binder A, the lies, the emails and texts from Mom. Binder B, the theft, the bank statements and the TK maintenance checks. Binder C, the truth, Grandma's planner, and the trust documents. I created a visual aid. It was a simple timeline, printed on a large poster board which I rolled up and placed in a tube. On Friday night, the night before the meeting, my phone rang. It was Maya calling from Chicago. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I think so," I said. I was looking out the window at the dark parking lot. "I feel sick." "Maya, not scared, just sick. I am about to destroy her life." "She destroyed yours," Maya reminded me. "She erased you. She made you think you were crazy for wanting a graduation. She made you think you were selfish for existing. You are not destroying her life. Jasmine, you are just turning on the lights. If the room is dirty, that is not the fault of the light switch." "The light switch," I repeated. "I like that." "Just remember," Maya said, "Tyler is going to lie. He is going to protect the money train." "I know," I said. "I am counting on it." Saturday morning broke gray and rainy. It was perfect weather for a funeral, or an execution. I dressed in a navy blue dress that was conservative but expensive. I pulled my hair back. I applied makeup to hide the circles under my eyes. I looked like a CEO. I looked like a woman who could not be gaslighted. I drove to the house at noon. The driveway was full again. The charcoal truck was there, taking up 2 spots. I walked in with my briefcase and the poster tube. The living room was set up differently this time. The furniture had been pushed back to make room for rows of folding chairs. At the front of the room, near the fireplace, was a large table. Mr. Holloway sat there, looking bored, shuffling papers. My mother sat next to him, looking solemn and important. Tyler was sitting on her other side, looking at his phone. The rest of the family, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, were filling the chairs. They looked at me as I entered. There was whispering. The prodigal daughter returns, the drug addict, the runaway. I ignored them. I walked straight to the front of the room. "Jasmine," my mother said, her voice tight. "We didn't think you would come. There is no seat for you at the table." "I don't need a seat," I said. "I prefer to stand." Mr. Holloway looked up. He was a balding man with a weak chin. "Ms. Kelly, good of you to join us. We were just about to read the final accounting of the estate, so the family can sign the release waivers." "Please," I said, gesturing for him to continue. "Proceed." My mother eyed the briefcase in my hand, but she stayed silent. She wanted this over. She wanted the signature that would legally close the door on her theft. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. "As you all know, Margaret's estate was modest, after the sale of the house and the settlement of outstanding medical debts. The remaining liquid assets were used to support the maintenance of the property and the care of the beneficiaries during the probate period." He picked up a document. The specific bequests, including the educational trust for Jasmine, were dispersed according to the needs of the beneficiary and the discretion of the executor. He looked at me. "Jasmine, your mother informed us that due to your personal circumstances last year, the funds were released to her to assist with your living situation and transition." The room was silent. Everyone was watching me. This was the moment. This was the lie. Spoken on the record. "Is that what she told you?" I asked. My voice was clear. "Yes," Holloway said. "We have the authorization letter here." "And did you ever speak to me?" I asked. "Did you ever call me to confirm that I wanted $25,000 released to my mother?" "Well," Holloway shifted in his seat, "your mother had power of attorney. She said you were unavailable." "Unavailable," I repeated. I turned to the audience. I looked at Aunt Carol. I looked at my cousins. I was unavailable because I was working 60 hours a week and finishing my master's degree. "Jasmine, stop it," my mother hissed. "Don't do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Ask questions?" I turned to Tyler. "Tyler, did you know about the educational trust?" He looked up, startled. "I don't know anything about Mom's business." "Really?" I asked. "So you don't know anything about maintenance solutions?" Tyler's face went white. My mother gasped. "I have never heard of it," Tyler stammered. I unzipped the poster tube. I pulled out the large timeline and held it up. It was color-coded. Red for withdrawals, green for Tyler's purchases. "This is interesting," I said, walking along the front row so they could see. "Because according to the bank records, TK, Maintenance Solutions received $12,000 from Grandma's estate for home repairs. And oddly enough, the endorsement on the checks matches your signature, Tyler." "That is a lie." My mother stood up, knocking her chair over. "She faked that. She is crazy." "Sit down, Marjorie," I said. I didn't yell. I commanded. I opened my briefcase and took out binder B. I handed it to Mr. Halloway. "Mr. Halloway, these are the canceled checks. Unless you're in the habit of allowing executors to launder money to their children through shell companies, I suggest you look at them very closely." Halloway took the binder. His hands were shaking. He opened it. He looked at the checks. He looked at the signature. He looked at my mother. "Marjorie?" he asked, his voice trembling. "What is this?" "She is lying!" My mother was screaming now, her face red and blotchy. "She is jealous! She has always been jealous of Tyler. Grandma wanted us to have that money. She told me." "Did she?" I reached into the briefcase again. I pulled out binder C. "Because I have her planner here, the one you tried to throw away." I opened the binder to the marked page. "May 4th, I read aloud. "Marjorie says Jasmine is in trouble with the law, needs legal fees." I looked up at the room. I have never been arrested. I have never been in legal trouble. But on May 5th, $5,000 was withdrawn from the trust. And on May 6th, Tyler bought a motorcycle. Aunt Carol gasped. The room erupted into whispers. The narrative was breaking. The drug addict's story wasn't holding up against the weight of the paper in my hands. "You ungrateful witch!" My mother lunged across the table. She didn't reach for me. She reached for the binder. I stepped back. "Don't," I warned. "Everything in here has already been sent to the district attorney." That stopped her. She froze, her hands midair. "The district attorney?" she whispered. "Forensic fraud," I said. "Elder abuse, embezzlement, it is all there. Mom, the truck, the fake company, the lies about me." I looked at Tyler. He was shrinking into his chair, looking like a child waiting for a punishment. "And Tyler," I said, "you cashed the checks. That makes you an accessory." "I just did what she told me," Tyler shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at our mother. "She said it was our money. She said Jasmine didn't need it because she had a job. She made me sign the checks." "Tyler," my mother shrieked. "Shut up!" "It is true." Tyler was crying now, the tears of a coward who realizes the shield is gone. "She bought the truck. She planned the party. She said Jasmine would never find out because she was too busy trying to be better than us." The room fell into a stunned silence. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Tyler had turned on her. The golden boy had sacrificed the matriarch to save himself. I looked at my mother. She stood alone at the table. Her family was looking at her with horror. Her lawyer was looking at her with fear. Her son was looking at her with blame. "You erased me," I said to her. "You took my money, my reputation, and my graduation. You thought you could write me out of this family." I placed the binders on the table. "Well," I said, "I am back, and I am closing the book." I turned to Mr. Halloway. "I expect a full freeze on all assets within the hour. My lawyer will be in touch on Monday to discuss the terms of repayment. If the money is not returned in full, including the value of that truck outside, we proceed with criminal charges." I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear the sound of my mother sobbing. Not the performance sobs this time, but the real, terrified sounds of a woman watching her world collapse. I walked out into the rain. The air felt clean. The weight in my chest, the one I had carried since the parking lot at graduation, was gone. I had not just disappeared, I had returned, and I had won. I sat in my rental car 3 blocks away from the house, the engine idling in the cooling evening air. The rain from the morning had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. reflecting the streetlights like a mirror. My phone was buzzing on the passenger seat. It had been buzzing for hours. Aunt Carol, Cousin Sarah, even my mother. Though her calls had stopped an hour ago, I didn't answer. I wasn't interested in their questions, and I certainly wasn't interested in their excuses. I had won the legal battle. Mr. Holloway had practically hyperventilated when he saw the binder of fake vendor checks. The asset freeze was already in motion. Technically, I could have driven straight to the airport, flown back to Chicago, and let the lawyers dismantle the rest of my mother's life from a safe distance. But there was one loose thread. The money was the crime, but it wasn't the wound. The wound was the empty seat. The wound was the lie she had sold to the family for years, that I was the cold, distant daughter who abandoned them, while she was the martyr holding it all together, even after the revelation about the checks this morning. I knew her. I knew she was currently back at the house, spinning a web of victimhood. She would be telling them that she only moved the money to save the house, that I was cruel to threaten her with jail, that she loved me more than anything. She would be using emotion to wash away the facts. I couldn't let her keep the narrative. I had to take that too. I put the car in gear and drove back toward the house. The driveway was still full. The memorial dinner for Grandma was still happening, because in my family, appearances were maintained even during a nuclear fallout. I parked behind Tyler's truck, the $50,000 evidence on wheels, and killed the engine. I walked up the path. The curtains were drawn, but I could hear voices. I didn't knock. I still had my key, the one I had kept on my keychain for 6 months as a reminder of what I had escaped. I turned the lock silently and stepped into the foyer. The air inside was heavy with the smell of pot roast and tension. They were all in the dining room. I could hear the clink of silverware against china, but the conversation was low and serious. I moved closer, standing just out of sight in the shadowed hallway. She just doesn't understand the pressure I was under. My mother's voice drifted out, trembling with practiced fragility. I did it for us, for the family, and to have her come in here, waving those papers, threatening to put her own brother in jail. It breaks my heart. I have failed as a mother. Clearly, if I raised a daughter who could be so cold. She has always been difficult, Marjorie, Aunt Carol soothed. You remember how she was in high school, always studying, never wanting to be part of the group. It is sad she turned out so vindictive. I just wanted her to be part of us, my mother continued, blowing her nose. That is all I ever wanted, but she chose to leave. She chose to miss Grandma's funeral. She chose to miss the family reunions. And now she comes back just to destroy us over some money that Grandma would have wanted us to use anyway. It is true, Tyler's voice chimed in, though he sounded less confident. She wasn't even using the money. It was just sitting there. Jasmine has simply lost her way, my mother concluded, her voice gaining strength. We have to forgive her. We have to be the bigger people, even if she hates us. I stepped into the light of the dining room archway. I don't hate you, Mother, I said. The silence that fell over the room was instant and absolute. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My mother spun around in her chair, her face going from tragic to terrified in a split second. I don't feel enough for you to hate you, I continued, walking to the head of the table. Hate implies passion. I just feel clarity. Jasmine, Aunt Carol said, standing up halfway. We were discussing how to move forward. I heard, I said. You were discussing how I abandoned the family, how I chose to be absent. I placed my tablet on the sideboard, propping it up against a crystal vase so the screen faced the table. You have all heard Mom's version of why I wasn't here, I said. You heard the story about the drug addiction. You heard the story about me being unstable. And now you are hearing the story that I am a vindictive daughter suing her mother over a misunderstanding. I tapped the screen. I think it is time you saw the receipts, not the bank checks, the time. The screen lit up. I had prepared a simple, brutal slideshow. The first image was the one I had taken of myself in the parking lot. Me, in the black gown, holding the diploma, standing next to the concrete pillar. The timestamp was clearly visible in the corner, June 15th, 2:03 p.m. This is me, I said. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, graduation day. I waited for an hour. I had 4 tickets in my purse. I swiped the screen. The next image was the screenshot from my cousin's social media story, the one taken at the exact same time. It showed my mother, laughing, holding a drink, standing next to the banner that said Family First. This is you, I said to my mother. June 15th, 2:05 p.m. You weren't at a hospital. You weren't handling a crisis. You were 40 miles away, throwing a party. I looked around the table. My cousins were looking down at their plates. Aunt Carol looked like she had swallowed a lemon. You told me it was an emergency, I said to my mother. You texted me 5 minutes before I walked on stage to say there was a family crisis. Was the crisis that the keg was running low? We were celebrating you too, my mother stammered, gripping the edge of the table. We toasted to you. We were there in spirit. In spirit? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Let's look at the spirit. I swiped again. This was a photo from later that day, one I had dug up from a friend of Tyler's Facebook. It showed Tyler sitting in the driver's seat of the new truck, holding a bottle of champagne. My mother was leaning in the window, kissing his cheek. The caption read, "New wheels. Thanks, Mom. Blessed." That is my graduation money, I said. That truck, that champagne, that joy, it was all bought with the trust fund you told the lawyers I didn't want. I turned to Tyler. He was staring at the tablet, his face pale. Tyler, I said softly, tell them. Tell them what? He whispered. Tell them what Mom said when she bought the truck. Tell them what she said about my graduation. Jasmine, don't, my mother warned, her eyes darting around the room. She said, Tyler swallowed hard. He looked at the truck in the driveway, then at the tablet, then at me. She said you didn't need the money because you were going to marry rich or something. She said educated people look down on us, so we should take what we can before you left for good. The gasp from Aunt Carol was audible this time. She said I looked down on you? I repeated. I was working double shifts at a diner to pay for my books, so I wouldn't have to ask you for a dime. I was eating ramen while you were driving a $50,000 truck paid for by my grandmother. It wasn't like that. My mother slammed her hand on the table. I was protecting the family assets. You were leaving. You were going to Chicago to become one of them. Cold. Corporate. I kept the money in the family where it belonged. I am the family, I shouted. It was the first time I had raised my voice. The sound echoed off the walls. I was your daughter, I said, my voice shaking slightly before I controlled it. I was the one who fixed your credit. I was the one who mediated your fights. I was the one who stayed up late helping you with your taxes. And you erased me. You didn't just steal the money. Mom, you stole the seat. You decided I wasn't worth watching. My mother stood up. She was trembling. I gave you life, she spat. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? By humiliating me at a dinner table? You humiliated yourself, I said. I just brought the projector. I looked at Aunt Carol. You called me unstable today. You said I was on drugs. Look at that photo of me in the parking lot. Do I look high, or do I look lonely? Carol looked down. Jasmine, we didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. You just believed the version that made you feel superior. I picked up my tablet. The slideshow ended. The screen went black. The lawyers are freezing the accounts on Monday, I said to the room. The truck will be repossessed. The house might have a lien put on it until the debt is repaid. I suggest you start pooling your resources, because the Bank of Jasmine is permanently closed. You can't do this, my mother whispered. She looked small now. The defiance was gone, replaced by the crushing reality of consequences. We are your family. No, I said. You are my relatives. Family is the people who show up. I looked at Tyler. Good luck with the job hunt. Ty, I hear the market is tough for people with a felony fraud record. I didn't know it was fraud, Tyler pleaded. I just signed the checks. Ignorance isn't a legal defense, I said, especially when you are spending the proceeds. I turned to leave. Jasmine, wait, my mother's voice cracked. Please, just stay for dinner. We can work this out. We can talk about a payment plan. Just don't leave like this. Don't leave us. I stopped at the archway. I looked back at the table. The pot roast was getting cold. The wine was sitting untouched. They looked like a painting of a dysfunctional family frozen in time. I realized then that I didn't want their apology. An apology would imply that they understood the hurt, that they felt remorse. They didn't feel remorse. They felt regret that they had been caught. They were sorry they were losing the money, not the daughter. I am not leaving you, I said. I left you 6 months ago in that parking lot. This is just me coming back to pick up the check. I walked out of the house. I walked down the porch steps, past the truck that was no longer a symbol of status, but a monument to theft. I got into my car. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I drove toward the highway, toward the airport, toward Chicago. The night was dark, but the road ahead was perfectly, beautifully clear. I had erased the lie. The only thing left to do was to watch the ink dry on the truth. The silence that followed my return to Chicago was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the atmospheric pressure drop before a tornado touches down. I knew my mother well enough to know that shame does not silence a narcissist. It weaponizes them. I had stripped her of her victimhood in front of an audience, and now she would burn the theater down to prove she was still the star. It started 3 days after I returned to work. I was sitting at my desk at Archer & Klein, reviewing a shipping manifest for a client in Detroit. The office was quiet. The hum of the HVAC system, the only sound. My phone rang. It was the internal line. Jasmine, can you come to my office? Elena's voice was tight, not angry, but guarded. My stomach turned over. I walked to her glass-walled office. Elena was standing by her window, looking out at the gray city. On her desk, her phone was off the hook. Close the door, she said. I obeyed. I just got off the phone with a woman claiming to be your mother, Elena said, turning to face me. She didn't identify herself by name at first. She said she was a concerned family member. I felt the blood drain from my face. What did she say? She said that I should be aware that you are currently under investigation for financial fraud in Ohio. Elena said. Her eyes were searching mine, looking for a reaction. She said you have a history of embezzlement and that you are battling a severe addiction that makes you a liability to our clients. I stood perfectly still. This was the nuclear option. She was trying to cut off my supply line. If I lost my job, I lost my lawyer, I lost my apartment, and I lost my ability to fight her. She also sent an email to the general HR inbox. Elena continued, picking up a piece of paper, attaching what she claims are character witness statements from your former neighbors. I walked over to the desk. Elena, I am currently suing my mother and my brother for estate fraud and theft. I have a forensic accountant and a lawyer representing me. The investigation she mentioned? It is against her. I opened my briefcase. I had started carrying my legal files everywhere, like a shield, and pulled out the cease and desist order Marcus had filed 48 hours ago. This is the case number, I said, handing it to her. And this is the police report filed regarding the forgery of my grandmother's checks. Elena took the paper. She read it slowly. Then she looked at the email printout in her hand, crumbled it into a ball, and tossed it into the recycling bin. I will have it block her address, Elena said, and I will tell reception that any calls regarding you are to be routed directly to legal. You are safe here, Jasmine. But warn me if she decides to show up in the lobby. She won't, I said. She is a coward. She prefers the telephone. I walked back to my desk, my hands shaking with a cold, vibrating rage. She wasn't just defending herself. She was hunting me. She wanted me destitute. She wanted me to crawl back to Ohio so she could say, see? She couldn't make it on her own. That night, I upgraded my security. I hired a private cybersecurity firm to lock down my social media and scrub my address from data broker sites. I installed a camera on my apartment door and another one inside the living room. I alerted the concierge in my building that absolutely no one was to be allowed up to my floor without my direct authorization. Living like this felt suffocating. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time an unknown number appeared, I imagined her voice on the other end. Then came the paperwork. 2 days later, a courier delivered a package from Holloway & Associates. It wasn't a settlement offer, it was a countermotion. I sat on my floor with Maya, opening the thick envelope. "What is it?" Maya asked, holding a glass of wine she hadn't touched. "She is claiming the $25,000 was a loan," I said, reading the cover letter. "She says I borrowed it to pay for undisclosed personal debts 3 years ago and that I agreed to pay it back with interest." "But you proved she spent it on the truck," Maya said. "We have the dates." "Wait," I said. I pulled out the second page. "Look at this." It was a document titled Promissory Note. It was dated 3 years ago. It detailed a loan of $25,000 from the estate of Margaret Rose Kelly to Jasmine Kelly. And at the bottom, in blue ink, was my signature. I stared at it. The loops on the J were sweeping. The E at the end trailed off just like mine did. It looked perfect. "I didn't sign this," I whispered. "I have never seen this paper in my life." "It looks exactly like your signature," Maya said, leaning in. "Too exactly," I said. I ran to my bedroom and grabbed my old passport, the one I had used for identification when I moved. I brought it back and held it next to the document. I overlaid the passport signature with the one on the document. "Look," I said, pointing. "The spacing, the angle of the K, it is identical, not just similar, identical. No one signs their name exactly the same way twice. There is always a microscopic variation." She traced it, Maya realized. She lifted it from an old document. "She is trying to frame me for perjury," I said. "If this document stands, then my entire case falls apart, and I owe the estate money. She isn't just trying to keep the truck, Maya. She is trying to put me in jail for filing a false police report." I called Marcus immediately. It was 8 o'clock at night, but he answered on the first ring. "We have a problem," I said. She produced a note. She forged my signature. "Send me a scan," Marcus said, his voice calm. "Don't panic. Forgery is the last refuge of the desperate. If she produced this now, after the initial confrontation, it looks suspicious. Why didn't Holloway present this at the meeting?" "Because she hadn't made it yet," I said. "Exactly. We are going to request the original document," Marcus said. "Not a photocopy. We need the paper. We will hire a forensic document examiner. They can analyze the ink age. They can see the indentation pressure. If she traced it, or if she used a digital lift, they will find it." "She is insane," I said. "Marcus, she is actually insane." "She is cornered," Marcus corrected. "And she is realizing that you are not the scared little girl anymore. You are a threat. Jasmine, listen to me. This gets ugly before it gets better. Do you have support?" "I have Maya," I said. "Good. Keep your circle tight. And do not engage. Do not text her. Do not call her. Let the experts handle the fake paper." The next morning, the cracks in the family facade began to show. I received a text message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam or harassment. But the preview text caught my eye. "She is tearing the house apart looking for old letters." I stared at the screen. I texted back, "Who is this?" "It is Sarah." Sarah, my cousin, Aunt Carol's daughter, the one who had sat at the dinner table looking down at her plate while I showed the slideshow. "She is terrified." Sarah texted, "She told Mom that you doctored the photos. But Tyler is talking. He is drinking and talking. He told Uncle Mike about the fake company." I felt a surge of validation. The united front was crumbling. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Mom wants to take a loan against her house to help Marjorie pay you off," Sarah replied. "She believes the loan story. She thinks you are going to bankrupt the family. I don't want my mom losing her retirement money to pay for Tyler's truck. Please, Jasmine, just end this fast." It wasn't an apology. It was self-preservation. But I would take it. Tell your mom to keep her money. I wrote back, if she gives Marjorie a dime, she will never see it again, and tell her that if she funds Marjorie's defense, I will subpoena her financial records too. It was a bluff, mostly, but I needed to isolate my mother. I needed her to feel the walls closing in. Sarah didn't reply, but 10 minutes later, I got a notification from Marcus. Mr. Holloway just resigned as your mother's counsel. Marcus texted. He cited conflict of interest. Translation. He realized his client handed him a forged document and he doesn't want to get disbarred. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Holloway running for the hills was the first major victory of this round. But the victory was short-lived. That afternoon, I received a package at my apartment. It had no return address. Inside was a box, and inside the box was a crushed velvet jewelry case. I opened it. It was my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she had promised me when I was 16, the one my mother had sworn was lost in the hospital shuffle when Grandma died. There was a note. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed. You can have the trinkets. You will never have the name. You are dead to us. Stop the lawsuit or the next thing you receive won't be pearls. I dropped the box. The pearls spilled out onto the floor, white and ghostly against the dark wood. It was a threat, a physical threat. She had kept the necklace for years, hiding it, just to use it as ammunition. I called the police. I filed a report for harassment and intimidation. I handed the note over to the officers. It is a vague threat, the officer said, looking at the typed paper. Hard to prove origin, but we will add it to the file. That night, I sat in my window, looking down at the street. Every car that slowed down looked suspicious. Every shadow looked like my brother. You should go stay at a hotel, Maya suggested. Or we can go to my parents' place in Wisconsin for a few days. No, I said. That is what she wants. She wants me to run. She wants me to be the victim who flees in the night. I picked up the pearls from the floor. I held them in my hand. They were cold and heavy. They were mine. She sent these to scare me, I said. But she just gave me back the one thing of Grandma's she still held hostage. I walked over to the mirror. I clasped the pearls around my neck. They glowed against my skin. She thinks she is hunting me, I told my reflection. But she doesn't realize she just walked into the trap. I took a picture of myself wearing the pearls. I didn't post it. I sent it to Marcus. Add this to the asset list. I typed, recovered today, along with a threat letter. Let's push for the forensic exam of the promissory note immediately. My mother was fighting dirty because she had no clean moves left. She was flailing. She was forging documents, intimidating witnesses, and sending ominous packages because the truth was a rising tide she couldn't hold back. I checked the locks on the door one last time. I wasn't sleeping well, but I wasn't sleeping with one eye open anymore. I was sleeping with a strategy. If she wanted a war of attrition, she was going to lose, because she was fighting to save a lie, and I was fighting for the only thing that matters, my own existence, and I was not going to be erased again. The forensic report on the promissory note arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was a dense, 20-page document filled with microscopic analysis of ink dispersion and pressure indentations. But the conclusion was summarized in a single, devastating sentence on page 1. The signature on the document had been digitally lifted from a passport application I had filled out 5 years ago and printed onto the paper using a high-quality laser jet. It was not just a forgery. It was a federal crime. My lawyer, Marcus, placed the report on his desk. He did not smile, but there was a grim satisfaction in his eyes. This is the end of the line for them, Marcus said. We have the original fraud with the trust. We have the shell company embezzlement. And now, we have an attempt to defraud the court with forged evidence. If we file this with the district attorney, your mother is looking at a minimum of 5 years in prison. Likely more. I looked at the report. I thought I would feel a surge of triumph, the kind of cinematic victory where the hero pumps their fist in the air. Instead, I felt a profound sense of detachment. The woman who had given birth to me was not a mastermind. She was just a desperate, sloppy criminal who had underestimated my intelligence for 3 decades. File it, I said. But not just the criminal referral. I want the civil judgment executed immediately. I want the lien on the house. I want the truck repossessed. And I want a full revocation of her status as executor of the estate. Consider it done, Marcus said. There is one more thing. The name change petition. I nodded. Is it ready? And the hearing is in an hour, he said. I walked to the courthouse with a lightness in my step that I had never felt before. For 30 years, I had carried the name Kelly. It was a name that belonged to my absent father and was weaponized by my mother. It was the name on the student loans I paid alone. It was the name on the degrees they didn't care about. It was the name that anchored me to a lineage of users and liars. The courtroom was empty, save for the bailiff and a bored clerk. The judge, a woman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked at my application. You are petitioning to change your surname to Bennett, she noted. Is this for marriage? No, Your Honor, I said. It was my grandmother's maiden name. She was the only person who ever made me feel like I had a home. I want to carry her name, not the name of the people who tried to erase me. The judge looked at me for a long moment. Then she stamped the paper. Granted, she said. Good luck, Ms. Bennett. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a physical shift in the atmosphere. Jasmine Kelly, the victim, the scapegoat, the resource, ceased to exist. Jasmine Bennett walked out into the sunlight. I spent the rest of the week surgically removing my mother from my existence. It was not enough to just win the lawsuit. I had to ensure she could never touch me again. I went to a notary and revoked every previous power of attorney document. I updated my medical records to ensure that if I were in a coma, the decision-maker would be Maya, not my next of kin. I contacted the credit bureaus and placed a permanent freeze on my file with a note that any attempt to access it by Marjorie Kelly was to be flagged as fraud. I was scrubbing the stain of her out of the fabric of my life. On Friday, as I was leaving Marcus's office after signing the final affidavits, a figure stepped out from the shadow of the building next door. It was Tyler. He looked terrible. The arrogance of the graduation party was gone. He was wearing wrinkled clothes, and he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He didn't have the truck anymore. I assumed the repo man had already come for it. Jasmine, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't stop walking. I signaled to the security guard standing by the lobby doors, but Tyler rushed forward, keeping his hands up in a gesture of surrender. Please, he said, I just want to talk. She is losing her mind. Jazz, she is tearing the house apart. She is screaming at the walls. You have to stop the lawsuit. She is going to have a stroke. I stopped and turned to face him. I maintained a distance of 6 feet. That sounds like a medical issue, I said coldly. You should call a doctor. She is your mother, Tyler pleaded. Look, I know she messed up. I know the money thing was shady, but prison? You are really going to send her to prison? And me? Marcus sent me a letter saying I'm liable for $12,000. I don't have that kind of money. Then you should get a job, I said. I hear the warehouses are hiring. It is hard work. Tyler, 12 hours a day, but it pays. You are so cold, he spat, the pity turning back to anger. Mom was right. You think you are better than us. I am not better than you, I said. I am just honest, and I am done paying for your lifestyle. You drove a truck bought with my tuition money while I took the bus. Do not talk to me about fairness. She made me do it, he whined. I am a victim too. No, I said. You were an accomplice until the money ran out. Now you are just a witness. I checked my watch. If you contact me again, Tyler, I will have you arrested for harassment. Talk to my lawyer. I turned my back on him. I heard him shouting something behind me. Something about family loyalty. But the words sounded like they were coming from a different dimension. They couldn't reach me. I returned to my hotel room. My suitcase was packed. I was flying back to Chicago in the morning. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my briefcase. There was one last thing I needed to process. When I had received the box of pearls from my mother, the threat she had sent to my apartment, I had been so focused on the police report that I hadn't looked closely at the box itself. It was an old velvet box, the lining torn and faded. Yesterday, when I was packing the pearls to keep them safe, I had felt something stiff beneath the velvet lining of the bottom of the box. I had pulled at the loose fabric, and a folded piece of paper had slipped out. It was a page torn from a different journal, one I hadn't found in the study. It was dated 2 weeks before Grandma died. I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky, the ink blotchy, as if she had been writing in pain. Marjorie was here today. She brought the papers. She thinks I do not read them, that I am too old and tired. She wants me to sign over control of the education fund. She told me Jasmine called and said she hates me. She said Jasmine wants nothing to do with this family anymore. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. My mother had told a dying woman that her granddaughter hated her, just to get a signature. I continued reading. I know she's lying. I know my Jasmine. She has the heart of a lion, but she is trapped in a cage of her mother's making. I signed the papers, but I did not sign them the way she thinks. I called Mr. Henderson afterwards. I told him to document everything. I told him that Marjorie is a thief. My breath hitched. Grandma had known. She hadn't been duped. She had been playing a long game she knew she wouldn't live to see the end of. I am leaving this note in the pearl box because Marjorie will never look here. She does not care about heirlooms, only cash. One day, Jasmine will get these pearls, and she will know. Run, my darling. Take the money if you can. But if you cannot, just run. Do not let her eat your soul the way she ate mine. You are a Bennett. You are strong. Finish what I was too weak to do. I lowered the paper. For years, I had thought I was fighting alone. I thought Grandma had died believing I was a disappointment, but she had known. She had been fighting for me from her deathbed. She had planted the seeds of doubt with the trustee, which was why the paper trail existed in the first place. She had ensured that the evidence would be there when I was finally ready to look for it. I finished it, Grandma, I whispered to the empty hotel room. I ran, and then I came back and burned the cage down. I took out my pen. On the bottom of the note, below her shaky signature, I wrote my new name, Jasmine Bennett. It was a contract signed across time. The next morning, I boarded the plane to Chicago. As the aircraft banked over the city of Columbus, I looked down at the sprawling grid of streets one last time. Somewhere down there, in a house that was about to be foreclosed on. My mother was likely screaming at a lawyer who wouldn't answer her calls. Somewhere down there, my brother was realizing that 40 years of enabling had come to a screeching halt. I felt no guilt. I felt no sorrow. I opened my laptop. I had an email from Elena at work. Subject: New project lead. Body: Jasmine. The client loved your analysis. They want you to lead the integration team for the West Coast expansion. It comes with a 20% raise and a new title. Let me know if you accept. I typed my reply. Dear Elena, I accept. And please note, effective immediately, my legal name has changed to Jasmine Bennett. Please update the HR records. I hit send. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. The hum of the engines was a lullaby. The war was over. The enemy had been disarmed, defunded, and discredited. I was not the girl who waited in the parking lot anymore. I was not the daughter who begged for scraps of affection. I was Jasmine Bennett, and for the first time in my life, the future belonged entirely, 100%, to me. The final settlement conference took place on a Thursday morning, 10 days after I returned to Chicago. I did not fly back to Ohio. I did not sit in a stuffy conference room smelling of my mother's cheap perfume and desperation. I sat in the high-tech, soundproofed boardroom of Archer & Klein, overlooking the steel-gray expanse of Lake Michigan. I attended via a secure, encrypted video link. On the large monitor in front of me, the feed from Ohio was grainy. My mother, my brother, and their new court-appointed counsel sat on one side of a long wooden table. Marcus, my lawyer, sat on the other side, representing me in person as my proxy. My mother looked like a specter. She had aged 10 years in 10 days. Her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was limp. She was wearing a gray cardigan that looked too big for her. She was trying to project frailty. She was trying to look like a confused elderly woman who had been bullied by a heartless corporate daughter. "We are here to finalize the restitution agreement regarding the estate of Margaret Rose Kelly," Marcus said. His voice was crisp coming through the speakers, and to address the criminal referral regarding the forged promissory note. My mother's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, not the trustee, just a public defender who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, cleared his throat. "My client maintains that the creation of the document was a misunderstanding. She was under extreme duress and attempting to reconstruct what she believed was a verbal agreement." "It was not a misunderstanding," I said into the microphone. My voice filled the room in Ohio, amplified and clear. "It was a felony." My mother looked up at the camera. Her eyes were wet. "Jasmine, please, I am your mother. Don't do this to me. I was just trying to keep the family afloat. I didn't steal. I borrowed. Families borrow from each other. That is what love is." "Love is not theft," I replied. "And love is certainly not tracing a signature from a passport application to frame your daughter for perjury." I looked at the data Marcus had prepared. "We have the bank logs. Mother, we know it wasn't a desperate scramble for survival. On the same day you withdrew $3,000 for emergency medical bills. You spent $400 at a day spa. On the day you withdrew $2,000 for roof repairs, you bought a flat-screen television." "I was stressed," she cried out, the victim mask slipping just an inch. "I needed to relax. I needed to feel normal. You have no idea what it is like to manage everything alone." "You weren't managing," I said. "You were embezzling." I turned my attention to Tyler. He was staring at the table, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. "Tyler," I said. He jumped. "The district attorney is willing to drop the accessory charges against you," I said. "But only if you go on the record right now. Did you know the promissory note was fake?" Tyler looked at our mother. She shot him a look of pure venom, a silent command to hold the line. Tyler stammered. "The forensic report is irrefutable." "Tyler," I said, "if you lie now, you go down with her. 5 years. Minimum security if you are lucky. General population if you are not." Tyler crumbled. It was instantaneous. The fear of prison outweighed the fear of our mother. "She made it on the computer," Tyler blurted out. "She scanned your passport. I watched her do it. She said we had to make it look real, or you would take the house. She told me if I didn't help her print it, she would kick me out." "Tyler!" my mother shrieked. She lunged at him, slapping his arm. "You traitor! After everything I did for you!" "You ruined me!" Tyler shouted back, pushing her away. "I can't get a job. My truck is gone. Everyone in town knows we are thieves." "Let the record show," Marcus said calmly, "that the co-defendant has admitted to the forgery and implicated Marjorie Kelly as the primary architect." The room in Ohio fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. My mother slumped back in her chair. The fight went out of her. She wasn't a matriarch anymore. She was just a woman who had been caught. "The terms are non-negotiable," Marcus said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the table. "Marjorie Kelly is removed as executor effective immediately. Jasmine Bennett is appointed sole administrator of the remaining estate. The house will be placed in a trust to repay the $25,000 stolen, plus legal fees. Marjorie may continue to reside in the home, provided she pays market-rate rent to the estate. If she misses one payment, eviction proceedings begin immediately." My mother gasped. "Rent? You are making me pay rent in my own house?" "It is not your house," I said. "It belongs to the estate, and since you plundered the estate, you now answer to it." "And," Marcus added, "a permanent restraining order is granted. No contact, no emails, no calls. If you approach Jasmine, you go to jail." My mother looked at the camera. She looked at me. For the first time, she didn't see a resource. She saw a wall. "Where do I sign?" she whispered. I watched her sign. Her hand was shaking. She signed away her control. She signed away her narrative. She signed away her power. Then, Marcus looked at the camera. "We need your signature, Ms. Bennett." A digital document appeared on my screen. I picked up my stylus. For 30 years, I had signed Jasmine Kelly. I had signed it on permission slips, on loan applications, on leases for apartments I couldn't afford. It was a signature of obligation. I looked at the blank line. I wrote a sharp, sweeping J, then I wrote Bennett. The software processed the signature, Jasmine Bennett. It was done, legally, financially, and spiritually. I was free. "The proceedings are closed," Marcus said. The screen went black. I sat in the silence of the boardroom for a long time. I looked out at the lake. The water was choppy, gray waves capping with white foam. It looked cold, but it looked vast. I opened my laptop one last time. I had one final message to send. I opened a new email. I typed in my mother's address, my brother's address, and the addresses of every aunt and cousin who had sat at that dinner table and judged me. Subject: closure. I attached a single image. It was the photo of me standing in the parking lot on graduation day, the one where I looked small and lonely against the concrete pillar. I typed 2 sentences. This is where I was erased, and today is where I end that. I hit send. Then I blocked them all. I stood up and gathered my things. I walked out of the boardroom and down the long hallway of the firm. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a number I had blocked, but voicemail notifications sometimes slip through. Missed call, Mom. She was calling, even after the court order, even after the shame. She was calling to scream, or to beg, or to try to twist the knife one last time. She wanted the last word. She wanted to know that she could still make me pick up. I looked at the screen. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing. I pressed delete. I walked out of the building. The revolving doors spun, depositing me onto the busy Chicago street. The wind was biting, but I didn't button my coat. I wanted to feel it. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and roasted nuts and winter. It smelled like reality. I started walking. I didn't know exactly where I was going, maybe to get coffee, maybe to meet Maya, maybe just to walk until my legs got tired. It didn't matter. For the first time in my life, the destination wasn't a requirement. It wasn't a demand. It was a choice. I was Jasmine Bennett, and I was finally completely walking into the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been a journey of justice, and I hope Jasmine's victory gave you the same satisfaction it gave me. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please comment below with your country or city so we can see how far this community reaches. Don't forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit the like button and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who need a little reminder that the truth always wins. See you in the next video.